Hi folks, how you doing? Good, I hope. Okay, so last week I did a little video introducing you to this quite impressive little feature inside Adobe Camera Raw called Super Resolution, and you can go and look it up on the internet on the Adobe blog. It is going to be coming to Lightroom, and when, I don't know, but I don't think it'll be too long. And there will be, hopefully, some restrictions taken off it in the size of the image that you can produce with it, because it does have restrictions. I can't remember what the pixel restrictions are at the minute, but I think they're going to work at lifting that pixel restriction cap. But the reason I'm doing this video is because I know one or two of you thought, well, it isn't it like a Topaz Gigapixel thing? No, it isn't. And Topaz Gigapixel. I was going to do a video on Topaz Gigapixel before Christmas, but then we had the problems with Janet, and that sort of put a kibosh on things. And I've been playing around with the trial version of Gigapixel, and of course my trial version's run out, and for some unknown reason I can't go and reload the trial version. It's left some track on my machine that I cannot find and get rid of, so I have had to go and purchase this very day for $99 Topaz Gigapixel, and that really hurt because, quite honestly, I've just spent $99 on something I'll never use, other than giving demonstrations as to why I don't recommend Topaz Gigapixel. But anyway, there you go. So, Topaz Gigapixel. What we're going to do is we're going to do a comparison between the two methodologies that I would use to do a 2x upsample on this image. Now, this image comes off a daisy. What the hell's going on there? Oh god, that's not worked as it should have done. But you can see we shot on a Nikon D3, so it's a full frame camera, still 12 and a bit meg. 180mm Sigma again, and get rid of that. Don't want that anymore. So, as you can see, it's alright. It's had a bit of processing done on it inside of Lightroom, and a couple of dust spots removed, but it's alright. It's sharpish. Better put my glasses on so I can tell properly. Yeah. It's sharpish where it matters, but it's got a very, very, very shallow depth of field. And so it's a good image to use because where the depth of field starts to run out, you can generate all sorts of artifacts and noisy bits. And yeah, so it's a good image to use as a comparison between my normal method of doing a 2x upsample, not that it's something I do very often, and Topaz Gigapixel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scoop this image straight over into Photoshop by going Edit in Photoshop 2021. And is Photoshop open? Yes, it is, and there we go. So that is the image from Lightroom, and it is at its standard resolution. It's at 300 pixels per inch, and as you can see down here, it's 14.187 inches by 9.44 inches. Alrighty. Now here is the Topaz Gigapixel version. I'm going to come back to this in a moment. I'm going to show you how I've set Topaz up, but I'm not going to sit here waiting for it to process, because on this image it takes about 5 minutes, and I just cannot be bothered letting the camera run on for 5 minutes. So I'm just going to set this image up in Topaz Gigapixel by going to File, Automate, Topaz Gigapixel AI. And I've put it on scale. I put it on 2x. So we're doing we're doing the same thing as we will be doing in Camera Raw. And first of all, by default, it would open up looking like this when it's generated its preview. In what it calls standard AI mode with these auto settings turned on. And there we go. Let's just sort of scroll it down a little bit. It's going to generate its preview again, which I find really bloody annoying. And I suppose we could uncheck that, but well, never mind. So ostensibly this is the preview that we've got of what our finished image is going to look like at these settings. Now, to me, it looks a little bit over sharp, and yet it's not sharp in these finer details. Now, these two settings we've got control of, because this is the thing I don't like about Gigapixel AI. Upsampling images and sharpening images that have been upsampled, you need to be quite careful and quite selective about what you're doing. And we don't have any control really of what's going on inside Topaz here, because, you know, suppress noise, it's suppressing noise to the value of 20, whatever that means. But if I take that down to 0, ostensibly you think it's now not suppressing any noise, but it is. I can tell that because this background isn't quite as clean as Topaz is making it out to be. I mean, this background here and this background down here. But if I go and move it again so you can see it, it's just going to sit here regenerating its preview. Now it also says it's removing 60 blur. Now it looks razor sharp on the eye, but here on these scales it doesn't look very sharp at all. It looks out of focus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dial out or take out the remove blur, and just let's wait for that to toggle up, and there we go. Still not really doing a great deal, and I can tell that it's very soft in a lot of places, and quite a bit of the detail is being I don't know, it just looks slightly artificial. On this particular image, I find I get overall I get a better quality image if I switch to compressed, and just let this preview generate out, and there you go. And I've actually got a little bit more clarity, if you like. When I say clarity, I mean definition, sharpness, in other words. I've got a little bit more sharpness going on in these facial scales, and that is, or those are, the settings I have used to actually produce this image under this tab over here in Photoshop. As I said, it takes about between 4 and 5 minutes to actually process this image. So I'm going to click cancel and shut that down. And I'll keep this image open for a minute, and we'll switch out to what we would have got if I'd have clicked process. And if I blow this up to 100%, you can see how clean this background is. It's too clean for my liking. Far too clean for my liking. And, you know, I mean, it looks alright. And for a one button click and do it plugin for Photoshop, I don't think it's too bad at all, apart from the fact that it cost $100. Yeah, $99. I forget what that is in pounds, but you know, it ain't cheap. And all I want to try and get you to understand is that there's a lot cheaper ways of doing exactly the same thing as we've got here in Topaz. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to this original image. All right. And the first thing I'm going to do is do it the old-fashioned way inside of Photoshop. This is prior to super resolution being available in Adobe Camera Raw. And all I would do is go to image and image size. Normally when you bring this up, this is in pixels or inches or centimeters. Just stick it in percent. You need to check resample, and then I would change that to 200%. And then for the resampling algorithm, if it's on automatic, I would take it off automatic, and I would use preserve details too. And I wouldn't bother reducing the noise. I'd have that reduce noise slider turned down to 0, and I would just click OK. Come on. This won't take as long as Topaz Gigapixel. That's for certain. There we go. Alrighty. So just so as we can see what we're doing. There's our image. It's in a fit to screen view. And you can see that it's now 28.3 inches by 18 inches. So what we've done is we've doubled the long edge and we've doubled the short edge. So we've done a 2 by upres, if you like, which is what we've done in Topaz Gigapixel. Now, if I view this at 100%, you can see that it is soft. It's unsharp. Whereas the Topaz Gigapixel is sharp. Now, here's the thing. Topaz Gigapixel is designed to give you guys a image which looks sharp at 100% magnification on your screen. Now, I've done videos on this, quite a few videos on this in the past. It's to do with these inches up here on your ruler. These inches are supposed to be an inch apart. They're not. They are 2.5 inches plus apart. Because when you're talking about prints, you're talking about real inches. These inches, okay? And so we've got a 300 pixel per inch image being displayed at 100% magnification on a monitor which is in this case 109 pixels per inch. To actually see what the image looks like, we would need to be viewing this at 100% on a monitor which is at exactly the same resolution as the image. But it isn't. It's only a third of the resolution of the image. So it's going to make the image 3 times bigger, or visually bigger, than it is in reality. So I've shown you how to do this before in previous videos. We go to View and we go to Print Size. Now if you go to View and Print Size and either your print size is greyed out or nothing happens, what you need to do is go to your monitor manufacturer's specification sheet for your monitor and look up the linear DPI resolution, or PPI resolution I should say. And the linear PPI resolution for this 27-inch ISO is 109 pixels per inch. So if you go to Photoshop and you go to Preferences and we go to Units and Rulers, you'll see over here on the right hand side we've got Print Resolution, 300 pixels per inch, Screen Resolution, and I've had to enter my screen resolution. Usually by default this value is empty. So as soon as you put your screen linear pixel per inch resolution in there and then click OK, your print size, where are we? View, print size will become active. So go and find out your monitor's linear PPI resolution, okay? Put it in there and this will work. Now then, okay, so if we come back to this image, which we've just upsized, forget this gigapixel layer. That was something that was automatically put on when I fired up Topaz Gigapixel in the first place. So this hasn't got gigapixel on it. So fundamentally I might as well just go layer and flatten image. Okay, rather like that. And as we can see, it's blurred because it's had no sharpening put on it. Which gigapixel does put sharpening on, but when we were inside the gigapixel control panel, could you see any control for sharpening? Because I blooming well couldn't. And this is the thing I'm not keen on above all else. You've got no control over the one critical thing when you're doing upsampling, which is sharpening. But if you are quite happy to give over control to sharpening, then yeah, gigapixel's fine. And yeah, there's a link in the description below. You can go and buy the damn thing and help me recoup some of the $99 that I've just spent for the sole reason of giving you guys this demonstration. But the way I would approach sharpening this image is quite simple. Remember, we've just upsampled the image inside of Photoshop using Preserve Details 2. I would just duplicate the layer and viewing it at 100%, I would just go Filter, and then I would go Sharpen, and I would go Unsharp Mask, and I would use my standard old default values of 500% as an amount, radius of 0.5, and click OK, and you think, Christ Andy, that looks bloody horrible. Yeah, it does. Does it look as horrible as gigapixel when we view it at full size? It looks worse. Yeah, it does look worse. There's no two ways about it. However, yeah, if I was to then hold down the Alt or Option key and click the masking icon at the bottom of the Layers panel, I have now removed the visual of that sharpening. And then all I need to do is to come in with a white paintbrush and just bring that sharpening back in where I want it bringing in. Alrighty. Now then, you still think, wow, Andy, that's looking ever so circumspect. It's looking dodgy. Yeah, oh yeah, it certainly is. But you see, the thing is, I'm only going to bother sharpening around the eye and these scales here. The thing is, I can control what we can see here simply by taking down the opacity of that layer. If I take it all off, all that sharpening has been removed. Yeah, and I can dial that sharpening back up to exactly where I want it. And so I'm just going to leave it at 58% just for now. And don't forget, this is a really, really crappy, awful way of doing the sharpening. This isn't the way I would actually sharpen this image. I would probably use a mask and an edge selection. And if you want to know really how to control sharpening inside of Photoshop, you could actually hop over onto my digital download store and buy my pro grade image sharpening for archive, print and web. Yes, and there's an awful lot of methods of sharpening inside of Photoshop down there, and it is only 49 quid, which last time I looked was a hell of a sight cheaper than $99, but hey ho. Let's get back over to Photoshop. Don't forget we are viewing this image at 100%, and as I said, this is a very, very crappy way of doing this job. But, you know, I mean, we've got a nice clean background, just the same as we had in Topaz Gigapixel. And if I now go to View, and I go to Print Size, and I come back to the Gigapixel version, and I go to View, and I go to Print Size, and I sort of scoot this along so we can sort of see it a little bit better, and then up back to here and sort of scoot this along and down a bit. Yeah, there's no bloody difference between the two, none. So what Gigapixel is doing, it's actually giving you something to make you feel a little bit more secure visually in the quality of your upsample, and but that extra little bit of cushion of security, if you like, the comfort blanket, is only accounted for within that sort of magnification or false magnification that you've got going on inside of Photoshop when you view the image at 100%. It's ridiculous. I mean, $100, kids, it's a lot of money to spend on something that you do not blooming well need. And like I say, if you want it, if you feel that you can get benefit from it, then fine, go and buy it and use it. But I cannot, you know me, I do recommend Topaz Denoise because it comes in very handy. But do I recommend Topaz Gigapixel? No, I do not. It is not needed. I will never ever use it in my workflow. I'll do another video, whether it will be the next one, it will be an interim one that comes out a bit later this week or not, I don't know, because I'm sort of still, I've got me juggling my balls in the air over time. Didn't come out quite the way I intended that. Anyway, I'll show you my thoughts about up-resing and up-sampling with Gigapixel on larger images in another video. But all I'm going to do now, just to round this video off, is go back to Lightroom and just go to Show in Finder. Boom, 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 boom. When it decides to show it me in the Finder, there it is. And instead of opening in Photoshop from Lightroom, we're just going to open in Photoshop via Camera Raw. And all I'm going to do is right click and go to Enhance, and we'll go to Super Resolution and we'll click Enhance, and this shouldn't take long, it'll take a few seconds. Give me time for a short slurp of tea. Oh, magnificent. Now here is our 2x upsample, and quite often you might find that you need to change your settings in Camera Raw from the original. I'm not going to bother, not really. I'm just going to click Open. And so there it is, it's open now. And you can see it's 28.373 inches. Is that right? Yep, it's the same size as that. And it's the same size as that. Yeah. So all I'm going to do is just bring that up to a 100% view. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing as we did before. And and we will go to filter and we'll apply Unsharp Mask. Jolly D. And we'll hold down the Alt key, click on the masking icon so we can't see it. Move it into position rather like that. I'll go and get a white brush, and of course I could turn the opacity of the brush down a little bit, turn it down to 50% so I can bring this sharpening back with a little bit more finesse, just where it needs to be. And of course the main focus of this particular image is the eye and the scales immediately around the eye. There you go, and we'll just go view and we'll go to print size again, and there you go, it looks exactly the same. Exactly the same. So again, I illustrate, is Topaz Gigapixel worth $100? No. In my opinion, there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to disagree with me, and they're quite free to disagree with me. And if you like trying to compress your workflow and save any mither, then yeah, fine, fair enough. Go and buy Topaz Gigapixel. There is also another way of doing this. Yeah. If I come back to Lightroom, and instead of exporting this image to Photoshop or opening the image, the raw file in Photoshop, I can just go to File and I can go Export. Okay, and I'm going to export this over onto my desktop as a TIFF, ProPhoto RGB 16-bit component. Yeah, 300 pixels per inch, nath all else, export. Yeah, and then all I'm going to do with this TIFF is right click on it and open with, you wouldn't believe it, Raw Therapee. And you can open this in any version of Raw Therapee going back to Raw Therapee 5.4. And you'll have the, I think it's go back to 5.4. Might not be. But anyway, if you go back to the public release from that's available on the Raw Therapee website, Raw Therapee 5.8, you can do it in Raw Therapee 5.8 public release. I'm in the Mac beta test release here. But here's a TIFF image inside of Raw Therapee. I want to ensure that I'm on a totally neutral processing profile. In other words, it's not doing anything to the image at all. For export purposes, I need to come to Colour, and I need to make sure that it's outputting back to ProPhoto. And then I'm just going to come into the crop and resize. I want to first of all check that my PPI setting is at 300, because quite often it will be at 600 inside of Raw Therapee. But we're not going to be cropping. All we're going to do is change cropped area to full image, and we're going to use this Langsos method, which I've mentioned before, and we'll go to change bounding box to scale, and then inside the scale dialog we're just going to go to 2.0 and hit return, and so it's going to upscale using the Langsos algorithm to a factor of 2, so it's going to double the long edge and double the short edge. But we do have to go and check this box to allow upscaling. So we've got all that set up, and then it would help if I actually turned on the resize module. And then all we've got to do is go and click the artist palette and let Raw Therapee do its thing and scoot it off over to Photoshop. And here it is. And you can see at the side, well, at the bottom, it's 28.373 by 18.88. And, you know, we'll go and view it at 100%. And we did have the option to do some output sharpening on it, but I'm never quite sure about the output sharpening on up-resing. I've got to have more of a play with that inside of Raw Therapee. And of course, all we need to do is just use the same methodology again. Filter, Unsharp Mask. Let's wait for that Unsharp Mask to go on. Now, the only thing is, because we've used the Langsos algorithm from Raw Therapee, which don't forget is bloody free, yeah, free, we've fundamentally got a slightly better upsample in terms of quality of detail retention than we have in either of these two shots that we did in Photoshop and Lightroom. So here we go, and I've just applied the sharpening there, same sharpening as we did before. Hold down the Alt key, click on the masking icon, get the old brush, and I'm going to turn this up to 70% and we'll just start to brush some of this sharpness back in where we want it, and just being selective and only sharpening what is actually relatively sharp in the image, because a lot of people still think that sharpening stuff in your image which isn't actually sharp in the photograph is a good idea. No, it isn't. No. But, you know, I mean, God. Let's go back to View, and let's go to Print Size. And there you go. Looks spectacular. Here's one done in Photoshop. Print Size. Looks damn good. Here we go again. Back to View. Print Size. Looks fine. And let's go back to the Topaz Gigapixel. View. Print Size. And honestly, you flick between all of them and there isn't really much to take home. There's a difference between any of them, apart from, if you ask me, don't think I'm sounding biased because I have a lot to do with the dev guides on Raw Therapee. I'm not. It's just that the Langsos algorithm for upsampling anything really does work fabulously well. And if you go and look at some of the really big fine art printmakers, especially over in the US, people like Mark Metronic, they all use the Langsos algorithm for doing all their upsampling to produce humongous prints from very, very small raw files. And yeah, so there you go. Raw Therapee's free. If you've got Lightroom, you've already got access to Photoshop. More than likely, if you're on, well, you definitely have if you've got Lightroom, the latest version. You just see how much easier the Photoshop workflow is. And this image is a little bit difficult for you to see the benefits of Langsos. I will try and produce a video that does show the benefits of it a little bit more. But it's still my favourite upsampling algorithm, and that is definitely not what's going on inside Topaz Gigapixel. So anyway, guys and gals, I haven't made that video to poo-poo Topaz Gigapixel. I've just made it to show you that there are at least 3 other ways of skinning the cat. One is the old traditional way in Photoshop. The other one is if you've got Photoshop, in point of fact, doing it the Raw Therapee way, because Raw Therapee is free. If you weren't using Photoshop, you were using GIMP to process your raw files together with Raw Therapee. Yeah, you could do it that way and it wouldn't cost you a bloody penny. And of course, if you're processing your raw files inside of Raw Therapee, you can process the raw file and upsample the output straight into either GIMP or Photoshop, and you'll end up with the same result. You know, so there you go. There are at least 3 different ways of doing exactly the same thing Topaz Gigapixel does, with the same end result when it comes to print output that won't cost you $99. Yeah, okay. So that's why I've done the video. Yeah, it's just making you aware. But of course, the other three methods involve a little bit more work than using Topaz Gigapixel. So there you go. In public information, there you go. Hope you've enjoyed this, guys and gals. Hope you've got something useful out of it. If I've saved you a penny or two, then that was the aim of the video. If I've not, and you want to try and use Topaz Gigapixel, just click the link in the description below, and maybe I can recoup some of the $99 that I've just spent that I didn't really want to. Okay, guys and gals, listen, stay safe, be good, keep taking the pictures, and I'll speak to you soon. Tooroo, ciao.